Hello, this is Rebecca Freedom, and this is episode 83 of Heard Not Seen, produced by John Beethan. Today, we're really going to do a deep dive into the topic of pleasure is your birthright, a return to wholeness. If you've been listening to my podcast, normally it's just me riffing, but today I have the honor and pleasure of having two potent and powerful voices with me in the studio. I have Sasha Zeilig. She is a intimacy, I say convergence director. She really helps people tap into that feeling of play, which is so important. And then we have Chris Cox, who is a DJ and engineer, and let's just say artist overall. We got the artist in the studio. We got the artist in the house. So I want to tell a short story of how this particular topic came about, and then we're really gonna hear from the panel today. And John, feel free to jump in the background. There's always a little quip in there you got.
I have no microphone. I'll have to scream.
John is just gonna be the echo in the background. So the way this kind of came about is that I met an individual, and we'll just call him Chris because that's his name, and we started getting into these really philosophical conversations about safety and about pleasure. And he went down this road of what it means to be able to be alive as a human. He said this beautiful title that pleasure is your birthright. And this had come after an experience of talking to him for quite some time, where I actually went from a really guarded place, and he was like, breathe, be present. And the present moment allowed me to fall backwards into wonderment, into the sense of being really young and held and protected. And for that moment, I felt really happy. And I didn't know how long I'd been on this earth feeling unsafe, and that I wasn't really feeling pleasure. I was feeding addiction. I was getting little short-term moments, but pleasure in and of itself, I think really falls on a larger scale, a larger context, especially when you say such a powerful phrase like pleasure is your birthright. So we're going to open it up now. And Sasha, can you speak to that a little bit about that particular, those are three powerful, pleasure is your birthright. So can you speak into that a little bit more and give people a definition of, from your perspective, of what that really means?
I'd love to. I believe personally that we, came down, made a choice to inhabit the human physical form this lifetime. And as you sometimes say, these things are animals. Below the neck down, we're pretty animalistic. And what I notice in my own body is that it just has a lot of needs. So it's constantly wanting something. I got to pee. I'm thirsty. I'm hungry. I want to whatever it is.
Oh, you can swear on this. This is explicit.
We can swear. Okay, good. So my body has needs, and when I satisfy those needs, I find pleasure. And that satisfaction. When you have to pee really bad and you've been holding it for a long time, that is a great feeling of releasing that. So I actually believe that, in our society, we're taught a lot to give, and most of us don't have a great ability at being able to receive the pleasure, but that this lifetime is about feeling good and feeling pleasure. And whether, there's... I'm opening another can of worms here, but, there's this reduction, I believe, of the word tantra in the Western society that has to do with sex and learning about how to connect or be intimate with a person or hold your cum in or whatever it has to do with. But there's a reduction there that it has to do with sex. But tantra is, a huge thing. And it's a way of living spiritually at the same time as satisfying the bodily needs. And part of that is the pleasure of it.
And there's a deep misappropriation of the word, and we'll get into how that really threatens safety in a little bit, but continue on your course. I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I wanted to say is just, a lot of people know the teachings of Abraham Hicks, and she's constantly just find a good feeling and everything will get better. feel the good feeling, get it, and it'll be better. And I think that that's really what we get to honor in ourselves is a present moment. What's going to make me feel good in my highest good, not just like an instant gratification addiction type of good, but like what is really the best good feeling I can find in this one situation or in this one moment. And sometimes it is sexual, and most of the time it's not.
Right. Yeah, Chris, I'm wondering to that point if you could talk, because, I think when people hear pleasure, they think sexual immediately. So I'm wondering if you could really maybe expound on like maybe different dynamic levels of pleasure or how you would sort of describe it.
Yeah, so I think the immediate association of like pleasure with sexuality is not wrong at all, but limiting for sure. Like as an artist, as a music producer, composer, whatever, I mean, perhaps the highest form of pleasure is that I feel is seeing what I've created and the way that it affects other people and the way that it sort of allows this kind of like real time. It's like communication in a way that's not verbal. It's not like it's almost empathy in reverse. It's like sharing your feelings with someone else. And not in like a forceful way, but just in like in a way that just kind of overflows from you and then, and the work and the craft that you put into it and then seeing that reflected in other people. I mean, so yeah, and I'm sure any other creative artist has some relatively similar experience of that. I mean, that would be, if you ask me what's the number one source of pleasure in my life, that would definitely be my answer.
Right.
So, and that's not to say the things that, Sasha said as far as just the bodily needs and stuff like are certainly, powerful too. But I like this idea of not attaching pleasure to one sort of specific level of experience, whether it's spiritual, psychological, emotional, physical, because again, so often pleasure is associated with just purely physical and
multidimensional.
Yeah, this really multidimensional experience of it, I think is interesting, and I want to see so much more of it.
It's such a great point. I was hanging out with some family friends, and this 13-year-old boy was like, I really want to exercise my brain right now. And I was like, well, I got some math you can do. And we just mathed for a while. I just gave him these random problems and numbers that he could work out instead of me doing it on the calculator. Mm-hmm. And so he found pleasure in exercising his brain, and I found pleasure in having somebody run my numbers. It was great.
So to the point, I was just reading a little excerpt from the book, The Art of Asking, and I think it's like Amanda Palmer. And what she said is, first we collect, as artists, we collect the dots. These are data points in our life of experiences that we have that you can't really plan or predict for. And then after we collect the dots, we connect the dots. And that becomes like a reference point of this experience of we're assimilating some sort of understanding. And then we share. And that's what you are really sort of talking about, is like, so at first our body goes, I have this need, right? So there's a collecting that's sort of happening. The animal's just like, hello, that's the lane of pleasure you're in. And then you start to connect the dots. And I feel like that really starts to impact our psychology, our physiology. Yeah. And then the sharing is this community, this greater like outpouring where you see like pleasure is not just contained to me, right? It's actually, so to that piece, and we'll kind of go into this, I'm aware of the deep sense of like my nervous system, like on a neuropsych level, instead of having cortisol and adrenaline running through my body and me being in my threat response of fight or flight or whatever, I go into parasympathetic, and I really relax when I feel like somebody has attuned to me. That there's like this deep sense of listening. There is like a flow. It gets into like this flow state. So let's talk a little bit about that attunement.
I want you to actually talk about, you mentioned it, we were hanging out, and the parasympathetic nervous system going down in the opposite of that. Okay, explain that, because that's an important factor.
So orgasm, right? Like if we want to use a word to just quickly get people to like the remembering of pleasure is actually the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system fire at the same time. So parasympathetic is the calming part of our nervous system, the GABA neurotransmitters that bring us down into more of a beta brainwave. And then there's our sympathetic that excites us. It's like, let's fight or flight or fuck or faint or whatever. And sometimes it's not just threat response. It's just about being awake. So we'll talk about the process a little bit. I'm going to have you. So basically, there's this process that.
So just to be really clear, so when we orgasm,
yes,
our parasympathetic nervous system goes down to give us a nice, peaceful, relaxing base, and our sympathetic nervous system goes up.
Right. They fire at the same time, and that's an orgasm. So so to the point, and we'll illustrate this, and Chris will get you in on the conversation too, is when you release something, when you're released, and then you have something on a spiritual level at the same time, that is orgasmic. That when you're just like, I've been carrying around this identity and this survival strategy for years, and you're suddenly able to de-roll and release that. And then this rush of who you are, the essential self, the core story comes in. There is this deep, profound pleasure, like almost like base root chakra type pleasure. So I'm going to ask Chris first, and we'll go into the process. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah. So being a musician, right, you play with different levels all the time. Mm-hmm. So in food, they call it the bliss point, where it's just salty and just sweet enough, but you keep wanting more. Mm-hmm. So can you speak into that maybe with just being an artist, as far as like the pleasure points you can reach with like release and also excitement?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's particularly with DJing. I mean, although it happens like on more of a macro level in a DJ set, but then it also happens on a smaller level within a single song. But I think it's one of walking that line. Is one of the hallmarks, I think, of a great DJ and a great composer producer too. Is understanding the anticipation, the release, the catharsis of a drop, whatever, in electronic music, or just an explosive guitar solo or whatever it is, and then and it really does follow the parallel of orgasm, how sometimes there's this incredibly powerful release. As an artist, as a DJ, as a composer, you have to understand that you can only orgasm for so long before we're not built to do it for too long, long. I mean, with training and certain practices, you can do it longer than I think.
Sure, but hills and valleys.
Yeah, hills and valleys. That's what it's about. So, I mean, to me, that's the essence of some of the greatest art is art. So, like, art over time, as in like music or spoken word or something. I guess art in the terms of paintings or sculpture, they don't really have that dynamic thing.
Well, I'm going to just jump in and then to say that is that one of my mottos, I live as art. Mm-hmm. We're going to get to this. This is going to be part of the story. But yeah, you can, when you live as art is provocative. It is peaks and valleys. Mm-hmm. It is like a sort of sustained orgasmic pleasure state. Mm-hmm. And I want to basically frame for everybody that's listening, to just take a breath right now and be in this moment. Like, be in this moment. Like, as you're listening, this is not, we're not talking at you. This is like an invitation to your own pleasure. It's to give you like vocabulary, to give you like access, to give you like the feeling of your heartbeat, and bring your attention to your right toe on your big foot and fall deeply into this like present moment. Because as a human animal, so much of our survival is based on negotiating triggers, I felt this way, this thing happened, this event, I had this memory. And we can spend majority of our day completely lost, not in the present moment. And there lies in the ability to lean back into that birthright of pleasure, is to say, like, I can be in this present moment. So I'm going to give the framework of the process, and then I'll have you fill in the story. Cool. Sasha and I went to this group, and there were several triggering moments from the group. And since I've been studying neuropsych, I watched her neural net, like a particular stimuli, word or event happened. And I saw this like well-trained neural net. So basically it's like a pathway. It's like what they call a cow path, something that you walk so many times that you'll just be, it's just so familiar. Your body just almost jumps into action automatically. And we all have
really an
neural nets.
automatic response.
It's an automatic response. We all have trained ourselves to that. When we wake up and we're just getting coffee in the morning. And we haven't even really thought about, like, I have gout and maybe I should not drink coffee. It's just like, nah, like this. And that is a neural net that has been created. So from this trigger, I witnessed that. I shared that with her. And then I shared her a process I learned at Naropa called de-rolling. I am Rebecca. I am not my parents. And we'd often play our parents or other people's parents in the classroom when I was getting my degree in psych and my master's in psych. And so we would de-roll so we could have ourselves and come back to our process. And after the de-rolling happened, this beautiful essence of your own core story was able to be discovered. So I'll let you fill in the details.
Oh, I should tell about it now, or should we just do it for Chris and then talk about it after?
Yeah. Oh, wait. I'm going to have you lead him then.
Okay.
And
that's
yeah,
exciting.
Yeah, you're our guinea pig. Welcome.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So he would have to have a triggering thought.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I've got it.
Okay. Yeah. Get him there.
Your best friend she just told you that she was raped.
Okay, triggering thought.
Okay, triggering. We had a little conversation around this morning, and I saw immediately Chris's anger and angst and wanting to jump to defense, which is then literally fight mode. So, in fight mode.
Yes.
Okay, so then, can you do this part of
the D-roll?
Well, now it's the name time, because I don't know how. Whose reaction is that, Chris? As the question in a way, and how many times have you reacted that way? Is it possible that there's another reaction? You're changing right now in this moment as I ask you these questions from, okay, fuck you, Sasha, but maybe there is a possibility, because I felt the same as that. No, we fight that. That's what we fight. Mm-hmm. So the question that you asked me that night was, did that guy hear you when I was triggered and yelling at him? Did he hear me? Which is what I wanted, right? Was for him to understand. But I wasn't able to say it in a way that he was able to understand. I was only able to say it in the way that I felt heard. Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm going to lean in real quick and say, I want to frame this process, because this is the takeaway for to access that pleasure as your birthright and the return to wholeness, right? We're piecing together a real powerful process that everybody listening can replicate and take into their lives. So, in this moment, I'm just curious, like when she brought up that trigger memory, how you're feeling in your physiology right now.
My blood pressure went up. My fists are clenching. Like jaw tightening. I mean, the very typical. It's sympathetic. I guess you could say fight or flight, but I tend to not have a flight response. I mostly just have a fight response. So,
is there anybody else in your life that also had that kind of response, like clenched jaw, tight, like father, mother, uncles, family, that you learned that sort of fight response?
Oh, from? Father, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. So you got it from here.
So then, So this next piece is just potentially separating your reaction from his reaction. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get to say your full name And if you're comfortable saying I'm not my father and using his name, I'm not Chuck Zeilig, for example, for me. So I am Sasha Zeilig. I am not Chuck Zeilig. So you can try it.
So I am Chris Cox, not Jeff Cox.
Yeah, and you can try to say the whole thing. I am not Jeff Cox.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's hard to wrap our brains around it all.
I am Chris Cox. I am not Jeff Cox.
Again.
I am Chris Cox. I am not Jeff Cox.
Again.
I am Chris Cox. I am not Jeff Cox.
Yeah,
I believed you that time.
Yeah. What do you feel now?
Just like a softening and like a relaxation, like a opening kind of feeling. It's hard to explain, but yeah, like the tension leaving and just a softening more than anything.
Pleasure. Yeah, to a different level. Softening can be a form of pleasure. It can that soft place.
What was interesting for me when I did it, because my fight response, I find pleasure in that anger.
Me too.
In having that anger, but I also realized, like, so my mother finds pleasure in her anger. Does your father find pleasure in his anger?
Well, he did, yes.
He did?
Yes, yeah.
So let's say it again.
I am Chris Cox. I am not Jeff Cox.
Again.
I am Chris Cox. I am not Jeff Cox.
One more.
I am Chris Cox. I am not Jeff Cox.
Oh, I believed you that time.
Yeah. You gonna go? I'll go. I'm Rebecca Freedom, not Tom McClaskey. That was my dad. Woo! That he inhabits a lot of my cells, so this one's really hard, especially since he died when I was 20. So I've been holding on to that legacy a long time. I am Rebecca Freedom. I am not Tom McClaskey. I'm Rebecca Freedom. I'm not Tom McClaskey. I feel like embarrassed. I feel like flushed. Like there's a sense of, oh my gosh, if I'm not my dad, then I'm really exposed. I'm really exposed. Like I can't just replicate these patterns. Like I have to sit in this like discovery place. Yeah.
One of the scariest moments for me was we were doing my mom, and it was pretty easy, that one. I'm Sasha Zeilig. I'm not Nancy Zeilig. I'm Sasha Zeilig. I'm not Nancy Zeilig. I'm Sasha Zeilig. I'm not Nancy Zeilig. But when we came to my father, I had it really circularly everywhere, and I was like, I'm not Chuck Zeilig. I'm Sasha Zeilig. I'm not Chuck Zeilig. I'm Sasha Zeilig. I'm Sasha Zeilig. I'm not Chuck Zeilig. And I had to kind of say it both ways. And Rebecca reflected to me that he has been in both of my hemisphere. He's entered my left and right hemisphere, and I've been living a lot of his life story.
Perpetuated shame.
Perpetuated shame, perpetuated save the world complex, rescuer complex. I certainly want to change the world, and he certainly does, and I admire that in him, and I admire it in me and others. But then I thought to myself, like, how much of this is mine? Like, do I have to change the world? Then I came home to what my core story was, and that is really the point of this exercise.
Right. So in the car, I was like, okay, well, great. So you've been living your dad's story. Like, for me specifically, the framework is both my parents died in my 20s. So there is this almost responsibility of legacy to happen, that you're like, well, their life got cut short, so I have to somehow alchemize the little bit of I got from them and then carry them on in this legacy thing. And I actually had this real clear understanding when I was in my early 30s, because I hung out with my dad's Vietnam buddy, and he was talking to me like I was my dad. And I left and I was like, I'm living my legacy. It's my turn. I learned. I'm on the shoulders of greats, but I learned. So I have been writing my own motherfucking story for a decade now, and it's wild and it's crazy, and it does not fit with my family paradigm, and they think I'm fucking nuts, and I offend people a lot of the time. And then every once in a while, people see my little soft underbelly. They're like, "Oh, baby girl," and I'm like, "Dang." So to that point, I was like, I know we all have our own core story, and because I had that moment where I'm like, I am not my dad's legend. I'm not carrying that out. This is my story. I started to be like, I am art. I am art. I live as art, and I provoke art in other people. Like as a counselor, I do more than just listen to people. I literally extract the artist from them. And it's a perspective and it's a point of view. And there is, because art is limitless. It offends people, it provokes people, it evokes people, brings them to tears. It's like the depth of aliveness when you are the living experience of art is huge. So I was sharing with you, this is my story. I am art. I live as art and I provoke art. And we changed the word provoke to evoke. And then you so clearly and so easily just said your core story.
I am love. I evoke love. And in the past few days, coming back to that every time when I find myself triggered and I am reacting and want to just react blatantly, I come back to that. I am love. I evoke love. And then it brings me back to my truth and that I don't just want to scream at somebody. I'm not about shaming somebody else or guilting somebody else or just being mad at them for no reason or trying to shake them to wake up. Yeah, I want them to wake up because I want them to know that they are love and they can evoke love. Mm-hmm. But that is really where I'm at. And so the only way I've been able to navigate some, pretty intense situations that I've been going through recently is to come home to my truth of, I'm not perfect. I've been that person who's perpetrated it or been the victim or even tried to rescue someone else. I've played all of those roles, and that's why I'm triggered by so many things, similarly to you about rape, for example, if we're talking about that I react to that kind of patriarchy, and that's what I was reacting to that night when Rebecca noticed this. But if I can do it from that place of my truth of I am love, I evoke love. And within that, there's a kindness that's bigger than me or anyone else, right? And the kindness is speaking the truth, no matter what. So that from that place of love, I come with my truth rather than just reacting out of angst or anxiety or reaction, literally.
Yeah,
I'm acting instead of reacting. Yes.
Yeah, it's actually you're not living out this neural net of a story, a survival story. It's sitting in the truth of your story. So when I say I'm an artist, I live as art, and she's like, I am love, I evoke love. Is there what comes up for you?
I think I really resonate with kind of both. To me, it's like love and art are almost they're almost kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, if anything, that is my desire more than anything is to embody, or if they're not the same thing, then art is the purest form of communicating love, and that's to embody love through art. I think is probably what I would. There's something or a couple things that Sasha said that I wanted to kind of reflect on. Sure. You're talking about truth and the anger when you're encountering things that are triggering, and there's something that I've sort of realized and then kind of a little forgotten and then re-realized, and I've done this several times throughout maybe the last 10 years, and it's when you come up against things that feel wrong, things that feel unjust, things that bother you, at a certain point you have to differentiate being right in kind of the righteous sense that requires other people to be wrong versus being truthful. And truthful, me being truthful doesn't require anybody else to be wrong, the way that me being right requires you to be wrong.
100%.
It's like that, and I think truth is a function of love, and that the phrase that struck me many times, because my dad was a super argumentative, highly intelligent, but super argumentative person who was really, really good at being right, but kind of shitty at loving a lot of the times. And that's something that I've realized over and over again in my life, that love is more important than being right, and truth is more important than being right. And it's sort of embodying those two things and recognizing how often are you fighting to be right? rather than fighting to be truthful or fighting to love. And seeing the difference there.
But you're right. That's when I was reacting to that man when I got triggered, I wanted to be right. And I needed him to know he was wrong.
Yes.
And he couldn't hear that.
Yes. Because nobody can ever hear that.
Right.
Nobody can ever hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People can hear love and they can hear truth. They can't hear, I'm right and you're wrong. That's never going to matter. That's never going to get through. So, yeah.
I feel like, side note, what I watched in your wholeness was the head kicking in, trying to figure out the exact right words. And what I invite you to do is like come more into your body and ask your body what it knows. And let that inform your brain so your brain can receive the answer from your body. So I would ask you, if you're willing, to say again at least 3 times that you're Chris and not whoever else, and it could be your dad again or whoever else you might find in your field.
To
de-roll that a little bit more and come home again so that you can really find the succinct words. And that's the wonderful thing about body. Like brain really overthinks things and tries to get the right word, da-da-da-da-da, and it gets all hamster wheelie in there. But the body will simply answer you if you relax enough. So I invite you to try again and see if you can find an easy answer.
That's
it's a lot.
Well, it's just words are I have such a love-hate relationship with words. It's such my original art form was words, was writing. So releasing the control freak aspect of finding the right word and always wanting the perfectly right word.
Try this. We'll just move along really quickly. Is say, I am Chris Cox. I am not control. 3 times.
I am Chris Cox. I am not control. I am Chris Cox. I am not control. I am Chris Cox. I am not control.
Deep breath. Yeah, super uncomfortable. but you look young. You look younger. You look like immediately younger. Do you feel that?
Yeah. There's a truth in there.
Yeah, it's weird. It's extremely comfortable and it's extremely challenging at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's.
So what I want to speak into here, since you've been listening, and really thank you both, your beautiful voices, for adding to this, is that we are animals, and there's so much survival strategy. And the longer I've been in the field of psychology and all areas, the super witchcraft or just, clit stroking or whatever, like oming or whatever. Yeah, oming kind of thing. Or there's, when you live in Boulder or you come to Encinitas or sex positive places or, different people that are just doing kirtans. There's all these different genres and venues to be able to sort of explain pleasure because the very simple thing is we move towards pleasure and we run away from pain. We avoid pain. It's just the animal response. And we try to get really sophisticated with this response. And so what I've noticed is the simplest things are the most profound. To be able to access yourself, to be in that orgasmic state of release, and to have more of you, it takes something as simple as de-rolling, right? To notice your survival strategy. I've been being like mom, dad. I've been like my classmates. I've been this sort of, I'm still playing out my 8th grade structure, and that's how I'm approaching my relationships. You can literally just in seconds to de-roll, right? I am Rebecca. I'm not Aaron Jens, which was the first boy I tried to kiss in the dark, and it was awkward. I hit his cheek, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I went home and listened to a lot of Garth Brooks and wrote about it. That was so awkward. We dated a month, and the trend has continued all the way into my 40s. So to that point, you can really de-roll. But I want to really close this conversation with, I think, a salient point, because pleasure is absolutely our birthright. It's inherent to the human experience. That's what I'm saying. If you're alive, you have a body, you have a human animal, pleasure is part of the deal, But people often don't claim it. We're so wrapped up in healing our wound, claiming the pain, being living in the dichotomy. That's a completely different discussion, but pleasure is your birthright, but right alongside pleasure. And we'll just take a little bit more time with this, is safety. Safety is your birthright, and that is something that is not inherent to your body. Safety is a social construct. Safety is a family construct. Being abundance and being loved deeply, being heard. I see you, I hear you, it's okay. 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 All do that together. I see you,
I see you, I hear you, it's okay.
I see you, I hear you, it's okay. Yeah, that's safety. And safety is your birthright. I've lived so much of my life feeling unsafe. So if we could just do a round and speak into safety, and there's a real epidemic happening, I think, around safety in spiritual communities, and we can use that as a backdrop.
Oh, it's an epidemic everywhere. Don't limit it to spiritual communities, because it is all over this world. When we have statistics like 1 in 3 women, and I can't even think of a woman. No, let me go back. We have statistics to say between 1 woman in 3 to 6 will have been raped or beaten in her lifetime. That's like the worldwide statistic. But only 30% of cases are reported. So that can't be true. So I'm starting to think about it, and I'm thinking all the people I know, of all the friends I have, is there anyone that hasn't been sexually assaulted or raped as a female? And I can't think of anybody. I could think of a couple that maybe only just had sex out of obligation, consensual rape, right? Where somebody badgers you and berates you into finally giving in. Still pretty much rape. But because our society, going back, is to the beginning of the conversation, is so focused on giving to others. Thank you, Christianity. Give, that's the only value. Then we all become these weird people pleasers. And then we feel obliged to make someone else happy and sacrifice our own pleasure or happiness or good feeling for the sake of someone else. And when we do that, we compromise our own safety, and we end up putting our bodies in the line of fire. Our body becomes the shield rather than our choices and our truth, saying yes or no. Protecting our bodies, we just go, whatever, body, you can take this hit, it's fine. And what that does is literally give us trauma after trauma after trauma. And when we have trauma, we leave our body. So we can no longer find the pleasure within the body, because we're way the fuck out of our bodies. We're like sitting on our shoulders watching over, like, I don't think so. I'm not happy in there. I'm not safe in there. That's not a safe place. So we put ourselves often, I mean, we definitely all get activated in a way that we were innocent, and the innocence might have been taken away. But once you wake up to the fact that you are utilizing your body as a shield, like, honey, it's time. It's time to flip that narrative and come home to yourself and start protecting your body, because that is your temple. That is your only place to live this whole damn lifetime. You came in and you chose this body. I chose this hairy-ass body.
The human and the animal, the love of your life is your body. It's underneath your neck, and you are the steward of it. And if you are the good steward of your mission, you don't have the luxury of not loving and protecting and participating in pleasure and safety for your body. So, Chris, can you say a little bit, maybe speak into, in your body, in the stature that you live in on a daily basis? Like, maybe tell me things that, what's it like to be you in relation to safety? Do you feel safe in your body?
Okay, so I've had a lot of like health problems throughout my life. So from an external perspective, I feel safe in the sense that like I did martial arts for most of my life. I'm very capable of defending myself. But from an internal perspective, I don't feel safe, just because I have hormonal issues, hypothyroid, I've had to have my gallbladder out, I have major back problems, I've had all kinds of like physical problems. Mm-hmm. So that safety is a weird thing for me, because internally, not so much. Externally, externally, I see myself as having the ability and then perhaps the obligation to extend the safety that I can have for myself to those around me, in sort of like a guardian role. But it's weirdly conflicted because I feel like I've been at war with my own body my whole life because of all of the problems that I've had, the genetic and whatever issues that I've had. So it's, complicated.
Yeah. So I'm going to close this discussion and say that I had a really lovely conversation around like safety. And thank you for that illustration, because I actually have, so I got herpes when I was 35. I think my nose is too big. There's just like, I'm fucking hemorrhoids and getting older, and my hair's turning white on my head and brown on my chin. I was talking to somebody and he's like, oh, you think that those things merit rejection. You think that, okay, all of a sudden you bought in to like, I have to cut these parts of me off. I can't, even that internal struggle of being healthy, right? Like, well, I have to reject this sickness in order to be healthy, that you're actually whole in it, right? Mm-hmm. For every problem, there's a solution built into it. And so to the point of safety, whether it's like at war with your body, or we're coming up against the patriarchy or society, or finding that safety for us, for me, and I hope for the people listening, this is the phrase I invite you to come into, and we'll say it together, and then I'll close out the podcast, is you're easy to love. And I've had the ability, like I actually have somebody who is speaking this into my life, like daily as someone. You are easy to love. You're easy to like. You're easy to want to be friends with. You're easy. Can you imagine like your environment you're easy to love, Sasha. Your body is easy to love. You're easy to be around. It's easy to be friends with you. I love you. I like you. It's easy. And Chris, like your body is easy to love. It's easy to be friends with you. It's easy. It's easy. It's just like, it's easy. Is it? To love. It's easy to love. You're easy to love. And I have spent so much of my life being like, I must be difficult to love. People that I love me leave. Like I'm too smart. I'm not smart enough. I'm this like dance. And really it's just like the depth of wholeness that walks alongside of safety, that place of remembering I have been made in the image and likeness of God, not the patriarchal God, but the great creator, right? That we are collecting the dots, we are connecting the dots, and we are sharing those dots with other people. You are easy to love. You have a core story that is all your own, and pleasure is your birthright. Thank you all for listening. Sasha, thank you so much for being in the studio today.
Thanks for having me, Rebecca. Yeah.
Go ahead and say your website for everybody.
Oh, thanks. It's sashazeilig.com, SASHA, Z as in zebra, EILIG.com.
And Chris, any shout outs you want to throw on the mic?
I'm building a new website, but it's not up yet, so.
Okay. All right. He is going to be spinning for us tonight in San Diego. I'm super excited. And where else do you premiere your music?
I'm mostly playing Colorado, but I play a few festivals and various things all around the country. My music projects, when I play ecstatic dance, it's just under my own name, Chris Cox. But I also have a dubstep and drum and bass project called Omega, and a collaboration with one of my friends from Colorado. That's like a psychedelic funk that's called UU. So those are both on SoundCloud. Yeah.
I love it. If you want to experience the pleasure of listening to his art, we'll put a link in the show notes. I'm Rebecca Freedom. Thank you for listening, and be set free.
Can we do art?
What?
I want to do our thing one more time. I am love. I evoke love. I want you to say your artist thing, and I want to see if Chris can find his.
Oh. Okay.
Post notes.
Post notes. I am art. I provoke art.
I am Sasha. I am love, and I evoke love.
I am Chris. I embody love through art.
And you provoke body love through art. Amen.
Embodied.
Thank you all.
art.
Thank you all. Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Au revoir.
Thanks, John.
Thanks all for watching on the live if you're there. Love you.